It's the greatest podcast in the history of the world.
It goes high up and under the full 40. Becky's taken a ripper!
He has a bounce, he crosses 50, he pins the ears back, and he drills the goal!
All the latest news and views from around the VAFA.
Here's the big man!
The big guy.
He's done it again! This bloke extracts some of the finest!
All thanks to Mequicare, proud partner of the VAFA.
Makes a name for himself with these long bombs from outside the arc. It's a long bomb from outside the arc.
This is for the love of the game.
You can tweet that and hashtag it bloody good.
Hello everyone and welcome to For the Love of the Game, the official podcast of the Ammos. We are flying through the season. Round 6 is now done and dusted. We're here all thanks to Mequicare. You've got Joe Pignataro, Paddy Grindlay and Jason Bennett. And lads, as I say, a very big hello to you. I'm very disappointed in one particular team in William Buck Premier this weekend.
I'll take a guess. Could it perhaps be the Old Zavarians, Joe?
Bang on.
He's thrown it down.
Bang on. I'm just about had enough of the Red and Black Mafia messaging me every week, Aura, how good are we? We're back. We haven't won a flag for 10 years, but this year's the year. And they go get their subs smacked by Old Brighton.
Did you get a text message on Saturday afternoon?
The phone's been loud. I've turned it up. I haven't heard a thing. Disappointing. The other thing that I was really taken by, Jace, and we'll get to some Burnets a bit later on, was the University Blacks. I'm worried about Old Scotch. Do you hold the same concerns that I do?
I was thrilled for University Blacks.
Yes.
To be honest, they were outstanding, particularly early. They dominated the game. They kicked 6-1 in the opening term. Hello to everyone, incidentally. And opened up a 34-point quarter-time lead. They had 43 points up at the major break, the Blacks. They held the Cards to just 1-4 in the first half. That margin slightly narrowed to 38 at the last change, but there was no tangible evidence to suggest what was going to happen next. The game completely flipped. Old Scotch took control in the final term. They rammed on 6-1. They got within a kick at the 27-minute mark, and Angus Jones from the Cardinals threw his boot at a loose ball, bobbling across the goal square late. Looked like scores were about to be tied up. That kick just clipped the post. Siren sounded 20 seconds or so later after the restart to give the Blacks a gutsy and a critical 5-point win, their second for the season. And joining us is their skipper, Campbell Moorfield. Campbell, thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys. Been on the pod, so it's a pleasure to be here.
That's great to hear, isn't it? That's up to, I think that's 6 listeners that we know about, which is great news.
Yeah, we appreciate your custom. Hey, Campbell, that was a thrilling game in the end, a pretty nerve-wracking one. What a win for your guys.
Yeah, it was nerve-wracking in the end. Scots were coming very hard. We know that they've got a lot of talent and obviously the reigning premiers. So we knew we would have our work cut out for us in the last quarter with them at their backs, but very relieving to hang on in the end. And a lot of the work we did through the first 3 quarters. Lost that margin at 3/4 time that we might have needed in the end.
What we've noticed really in Premier Men's this year, and there has been a divide open up between the top 5 and the bottom 5 on the ladder. We'll talk about that in a little bit later on. There's a 2-game gap now between 5th and 6th, which has sort of popped up out of nowhere. What we've noticed, Campbell, is that pretty much every team in the competition is good enough to hang with other teams, but the teams in the bottom half of the draw are just having sort of lapses in concentration and not quite able to put it together for long enough to win games, which has been a bit of an issue for you guys as well. But talk us through your first half and what really clicked, because that was the best footy I've seen Blacks play in a long time. Do you agree?
Yeah. Our first quarter with the wind at our backs, the rain hadn't come down quite so yet. We were just unbelievable. Able to work it out from the centre and link up forward, take a lot of contested marks inside 50 scoreboard, which has been an issue for us at times. And then, to be honest, I was more impressed by our second quarter when the rain came down, holding Scotch to 0 goals when the wind went their way, and we were able to put 2 goals on ourselves. The work that we were able to do around stoppages and just really gritted. We knew that we had to slow the game down because when Scotch get on a roll, they're hard to stop. So we were just happy to repeat stoppages and, almost away 30 minutes that was in the second quarter. And it was nice to extend our margin into halftime. So we were really pleased with that first half. But, yeah, obviously, like you've said, our 120-minute efforts haven't quite been there this year. So we've made a conscious effort, particularly in the second quarters. That's when some of our lapses have happened. It was pleasing to get through to halftime with a good 60 minutes under our belt.
Now, Campbell, for those who haven't watched you play, you usually line up behind the footy. You're a big V defender last season. You kicked 2 goals on the weekend, which you matched your total across the entire year of 2024, and you did so, by the looks of it, by half-time. Did you line up ahead of the footy this weekend, and if so, what was behind the switch?
Yeah, I did. I matched my total for the last 5 years total, so I was very pleased with my first half. We thought, just looking at Scotch, we know that they've had a lot of guys elevated to VFL, injuries in their tall stock. So just assessing that they probably didn't have an obvious matchup for me down back. And we've had some issues just putting scores on the board over, this year and previous years, I guess. So we thought that just have a bit of a different look up forward. Hopefully I could clunk a couple of marks, which I was able to do in the first quarter. We thought we'd just give it a go. And it seemed to work on the weekend, so we were pleased with that.
So for a couple of years now, you would have had the forward group moaning about just how difficult it is playing down in the forward line, Campbell. While you guys are holding back the tide at the other end of the ground, you're constantly hearing the moaning and the gripes about forwards and delivery and get it into us. And then you just go forward and go, guys, how easy is this?
Well, it's nice when it's not raining. It felt nice and sticky early, but then, by the end of the game, I knew what they were complaining about because, it's not fun playing key forward in the wet. The amount of times that you're in packs of 8 or 9 guys and it might graze your fingertips, but it's certainly not an easy kick up forward, I can tell you that, yeah.
Campbell, can this win sort of spark something into your season, beating the reigning premiers?
Well, I hope so. We've the last couple of years we've had similar sort of starts where we've been 0-5, 1-6, sort of early doors. So hopefully, and then we've been able to get a bit of a run on. And I think that this should be able to do the same. We've spoken about that. We've been like 95% in a lot of areas. So hoping that this can just give us the confidence to go on with that and just complete games now that we know that we're able to do it. Although, we maybe did for 3 quarters on the weekend, but we take a lot of confidence out of going up against the best sides, like we did at the back end of last year, taking Scob and Xavier, and now we've knocked off Scotch. So some of these real heavy hitters in A grade, we know that we can match it against the best and hopefully take that forward.
We've floated this theory a couple of times on the show throughout the year, Campbell, that the 2 uni sides are at a slight disadvantage in that a lot of the uni students turn up in O week, etc. They roll up late. So, other clubs have got players right across the pre-season. You guys tend to have a bit of an influx late of fresh faces that come in. So you haven't quite gelled and spent as much time together over the summer. Takes a little bit of time to get up and running. And then once you do, you find yourself on an even footing. Do you subscribe to that theory in any way, shape or form? And that's why the back end of your seasons tend to be a little bit better than the starts, because it takes you 5 or 6 weeks of playing together to have that chemistry and that cohesion fully built?
The evidence would suggest that, but I'm not sure I fully subscribe. I think that we had a great pre-season and we had a lot of guys around for the majority of the pre-season. Going into round 1, we genuinely thought that we could match Old Bryden. That was how good that our pre-season was. I think for us, it's more just a reflection of we've got quite a young group at the moment. Particularly around the midfield, who the best is awesome, one of the best midfielders in the league when they're up and going. It's just the consistency, particularly against the bigger bodies in A grade, and when in this early part of the year, when teams are able to move the ball quickly, when the decks are nice and dry, it's we just kind of struggle at times to stop momentum when it's not going our way. So, for the most part, I felt like we've actually played every game really well for 90% of the game. It's just that 10% where we've lapsed that we've let ourselves down a few times.
One of the guys, Campbell, that I really liked calling last year was your wingman and the number 8, James Clark, who had a super season, rising star of the competition and of your footy club. And he's still just turned 21 in January. He looks to have made the move perhaps to an inside midfielder role. He's getting more of the footy. Can you tell us a little bit about his development?
Yeah, he's been awesome for us. He came down last year, and the first night we ran a 2K time trial, and he beat everyone by about 15 seconds. Right. So we knew that we had something special straight away, and then yeah, like you said, I think he finished third in our BNF last year as a 20-year-old first-year player on the wing, which is a massive testament to him. He's super brave. We love him down back because he would just float across and intercept for days, which is awesome. But yeah, this pre-season he went off and did a bit of work at Port Melbourne, where he put on a bit more size, got a bit stronger. And yeah, he's made the move inside now, and yeah, just seems to find the footy. He's going to be an awesome player for us, if not already. And we just love seeing his development because he's one of the great young men that I've ever come across. He's super humble, but super hardworking. And he still likes to float across backs and intercept. So if he can do that as an inside mid, then yeah, he's going to have a serious career.
Outstanding again on the weekend. 22 disposals, 12 tackles, 10 clearances for James Clark. Kane Loftus also having a good year. Liam O'Neill. Who do you reckon would be leading your best and fairest at the moment, or maybe sort of on the podium, the top 3 or 4 guys that have really had outstanding, the first 6 weeks, first third of the season?
Yeah, it's probably a couple of new guys. Kane Loftus, like you spoke about, who's a really exciting, explosive mid who we haven't really had at the Blacks in my time. He's had a great season so far. Zach Dacus, who's come across from Scott, playing a bit of half-back and just finds the footy. He thinks of himself as a Nick Dacos type. I'm not sure he uses the ball quite as well, but he can certainly find it.
You got to aim high, don't you, Campbell? I mean, you've got to aim high.
You do. He's got the flashy boots to go with him too. So, yeah, he loves it. And then Matt Grocott as well from centre forward. Just always, his body has let him down the last couple of years, but now he's on the park. He's super consistent and works super hard. It was nice seeing him in front of me this weekend and just wheels and goes on his left and delivers it beautifully. So, yeah, a couple of strong performances to start the year.
Well, Campbell, it's been great to catch up. Just the last one before we let you go, of course, Big V coming up soon. You got your aspirations on potentially pulling on the jumper again?
Well, of course, yeah. I've had a couple of great experiences the last few years getting over to Perth with Paddy. We missed you over there, Joey. I know you had bigger and better things to do, but that was a great weekend, but disappointing not to get in, obviously, last year. So hopefully I'll be able to get another jumper this year and make amends for that because, yeah, it's always a great day.
Hopefully Daniel Harford was watching, looking for a new gun forward. Campbell Moorfield might be the bloke.
I'm not sure about that. I might find my way down back again, but we'll see.
Who else would you like to pump up the club that you think should be in the mix on the short list for half and the selectors to have a look at from your club, the Big V?
I think one that always flies under the radar is my mate down back, Sam McKenzie. Just one of the great lockdown defenders, always gets the toughest job, is kept like some of the gun forwards in the competition to 0 marks, not just 0 goals, 0 marks. So it's been an unbelievable performer over the last couple of years and definitely deserves a bit of recognition.
Well, Campbell, we look forward to finding out whether you're in the team a bit later on this year. You've got a big game against De La Salle this weekend at the Dairy Bell. Hopefully for the fans of the Blacks, you can string a couple of wins in a row together and get the season back on track. Thanks for jumping on and joining us.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you.
Great to spend some time with Campbell Moorfield, the University Blacks, having a win. Just before we get off this game, can we just go back to the Old Scotch side of things, Jace? Because I do have some real concerns now about... I know the unavailability or the availability of players, and we talked last week about the lack of the tools in the forward line. We saw them in round one. Will Clark seemed to be the man and the answer to their problems on those days, but obviously it was wet on the weekend. It makes it a bit tough. They left their run so late, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Mark Knapp said it was a tale of two halves again for us. Uni Blacks controlled the territory in the first half, able to capitalise on those opportunities. He was really pleased with their response after half-time. They arrested the momentum in the third before playing the game with far more efficiency in the last term. Their tackle numbers, their pressure acts increased. They created far more scoring opportunities, and they had another debutant, Nelson Troon, who acquitted himself well at the level. But, yeah, just left themselves too much to do in that final quarter.
The concern for me now, Joe, is that we talk a lot about their scoring capacity and the big guys who may not be there up front, but they've actually conceded the second most points across top flight this year, only to D-La in first. So that's now becoming a worry too, because the Old Scotch midfield probably prides itself on being contested and winning the footy and then farming it out to those outside users. But they're getting scores kicked on them by the other competing clubs around that mark. So let's keep an eye on them. Yeah. I do feel like they'll be a second half of the year team, though, once they get some numbers back.
That first half was unbelievable.
problematic,
Just sitting there watching that. Blacks were absolutely outstanding, but Scotch were just, they were definitely a step off the pace. Let's talk about the pace setters and the top of the table clash.
Oh, yes, I want to know what's going on with the aura.
Toorak Park, Old Brighton have officially established themselves as the team to beat if they weren't already. They kick 2 games clear now on top. They're 2 games clear of the field after comfortably dismantling Old Zabs at Toorak Park. Zabs ended the game in second and confident of challenging the league leaders, and for a quarter and a half, that appeared to be the case. There was not much in the game, although the Tunners then just found another gear midway through the second term. Their efficiency saw them boot the first 5 goals of the quarter. They got out to a 35-point lead. Zabs kicked a couple of late ones in the second quarter, got it back to 22 at the half. But then after Brighton kicked the first 2 goals of the third quarter, the result was never really in doubt. They powered away with 5 goals to 1 in the last term. In the end, it was a 61-point win. Gives them a 2-game advantage on top of the ladder after just 6 rounds. And Max Benier, who we know is an athletic halfback, intercepting, marking type player, he went forward, booted 3 goals, used his speed and his athleticism for Old Brighton. What a wonderful move that was from Marcel Bruin, and another string to the bow to know they've got someone like Max Benier now who they can use as an effective swingman. Harry Hill, great again, had 25 touches, 7 clearances, a couple of goals. Tom Burnell was great as well. Wade Brosnahan kicked 3 for Zabs. Campbell Lane continued his great form, 27 touches, 10 rebounds. So Zabs retained second spot on percentage from St Kevin's, Old Haileybury and St Bernard's. But Old Brighton now, after 6 games, they're 2 clear of the field.
And Joey, the number 1 team for scoring and the number 1 team for defence as you look at points scored and points scored against. So they've just started the year better than anyone else. They've won 19 quarters, lost just 4. It's just been a super start. And
the results of the weekend all of a sudden have cracked open, as I mentioned a little earlier, a 2-game divide between the top 5 and the bottom 5. Somehow out of nowhere, the results have all combined. You've now got your top 5 teams, and the gap is 2 games between 5th and 6th spot now. Collegian sitting in 6th spot have dropped off the pace after that narrow loss to St Kevin's at Harry Trott on the weekend, which has been a bit of a recurring theme for the Lions this year. They've been close. They've been right in games in the last quarters and just haven't been able to find a way to win now. That's 3 times it's happened to them this year. There was nothing in it all afternoon. The Lions were 13 points up at halftime. That was the largest margin of the game all afternoon. St Kevin's kicked the only 2 goals of the third term, got to a 2-point lead, then got it out to 8 points. Paddy, you were at this game. What did you make of it?
Well, wet weather footy, it started, we thought that maybe we'd get some clean conditions because it had been raining all morning. It sort of stopped at around, I'd say, midday, held off for a couple of hours. The track was in pretty good nick, especially on the outside. So we started off thinking that we'd get a fairly contested, but once the ball got to the outside, that once it would go quick once it got there. Then the rain started to fall in earnest and it became pretty much a long-form rugby match, which is what Plugger Lynch told us at his quarter-time address. From that point onwards, though, I think St Kevin's, I think they'll be really proud of this result. So we mentioned that last week they brought in 4 debutants. The previous week they've had a few players go out and they've got a few guys waiting in the wings. All of those guys retain their places, so the likes of Dexter Prime and Seb Duffy, Angus Phillips, and then Gussie Hanrahan, who is a Sydney VFL player this year, so he's got a bit more class. It was Gus Hanrahan who was our Skins player of the day, though, on that wing, just racking up possessions, a couple of goals, kicked the sealer from the top of the goal square. Really congested, really contested, not one for the name of game archives at all, but I think one that both coaches will be somewhat happy with in the sense that they asked their players to do a job and they did so. Collegians, the wrong side of the result, but promising signs, I would say. I wanted to flag, we talked about Big V a little bit earlier on, Joey, Angus Hart of St Kevin's. So he was a guy who was the second banana next to Paddy Kerr last year in the forward line. Sort of played, I reckon, a little bit of a decoy full forward role to allow Kerr the space. He's gone back this year. Sam Critchley has gone forward. Critch didn't play on the weekend. Hart had Alex Lukic, and in the wet, the big fella down back, he was imperious, especially across those first 3 quarters. I've seen a lot of St Kevin's this year, albeit I've called them, I think, 4 times now on the SEN app and on vafa.com.au. I haven't seen a key defender as dominant and as impactful from the last line as Angus Hart has been. So he's one, I think, for Daniel Harford to keep his eye on.
From a Collegians perspective, I saw Josh Walker racked up another 37 touches for the Lions. He'd have to be in Big V consideration. And how's his stat line, Joey, from Max Pinchbeck, who had 21 disposals, 14 contested possessions, 8 clearances and a goal, and throw on top of that 25 tackles.
25?
25 tackles. He had more tackles than touches. 21 disposals, 25 tackles, and he is also having a fantastic year and must be in Big V calculations as well.
So you'd say 20 tackles. That's incredible. That would only happen once a year. No, he did it the week before as well against the University Blacks. He had 22 disposals, 20 tackles, 15 contested possessions.
Well, put him in the team then.
Stick
Put
him in the
straight
centre
team.
circles and he'll be the last up after every contest. He was superb, Maxi Pinchbeck. The other one that I quite liked, and I think you'll get a kick out of this, Joey, is Big Bear Mayhook.
Oh, don't talk about the bear.
Now, Big Bear, we noticed that he was missing in round 5. We wondered where he'd been. He had a spider bite.
What?
Had wrapped it up. It had got infected. He'd had to miss out. His leg was strapped up to high heaven. It was apparently pretty nasty. We've done some journalistic research and we've uncovered that it was perhaps a whitetail spider that bitten him.
Journalistic research. Why don't you just ask him?
Yes, and it got pretty nasty, but he showed no signs of the spider bite. I was hoping that, and I'm sure the Lions fans were hoping that it would give him stickier mitts than usual.
Oh, boy.
In the driving rain, wasn't the case.
He's
so,
run with a
in those
Spider-Man
conditions.
gag.
And the spider,
There's a few other gags to come across the course of the podcast. Don't you worry.
The spider's out for 6 weeks, incidentally.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised when you come up against the big bear in the centre square. Mind you, I'd still beat him in the ruck. Just to echo your thoughts, Angus Hart, he was like almost a run and gun type operator as well. So nice to hear that he's got another string to his bow. Can we go to the Dairy Bell?
Yes,
Are we allowed to go to the Dairy Bell?
And it did take, well, yeah, we can go to the
When
Dairy
did
Bell.
what
sure.
did it take? It took 4-4-28 to 2 behinds in the first quarter.
They seized control early. It's fair
Yes.
to say the Snow Dogs kicked the first 5 goals of the game before,
I'm told it was Bulldogs Essendon-like.
before D-La hit the scoreboard midway through the second term. It was 28 points at the major break. And there was some hopes of a fight back, though. D-La kicked 3 goals to 1 in the third term. They got within 17 points. And then Rhino Mira was swung forward. He kicked a goal in the opening minute of the final term, and suddenly it was 11 points. Crowd started to get involved, and it did start to feel that there
Crowd
might be
started to get
a
involved.
chance for a come-from-behind win for De La Salle, but St Bernard's, to their credit, managed to settle. They found the next couple of goals via Ollie Liberatore and Eden Sibold, and that sort of quelled the resistance. And then Matthew Watson put it to bed with a goal entering time on. And the Snow Dogs improving their away record to 4-0, 32-point win, keeps them on top 4 pace and a couple of games clear now of that chasing pack. So good result in the end for St Bernard's. But again for De La, Nick Highland, every time we chat during the week, it's pretty much the same theme repeated most weeks. Similar story again this week. Had patches where they were on top, didn't get their reward on the scoreboard and didn't therefore put pressure on the opposition like they could have. They got punished on turnover. St Bernard's converted their chances, which left D-La chasing the game. Some sloppy skill errors and lapses in concentration, again proving costly, but he was proud of how they hung in. They got it to 11 points before being overrun late. So they know their best is good enough to challenge in patches, but they have to maximise when they have momentum and put the opposition under scoreboard pressure to give themselves that chance, because they have these periods of the game where they're on top for 15 or 20 minutes, but they just don't put it on the scoreboard.
Unfortunately, they don't. Now, I've done this podcast since 2018, and Brian Waldron used to sit in your chair.
This was the Waldron Pignataro Cup. Congratulations. Has he come by and
I've
given
never
it to you
lost
this
it.
week?
I've never lost it in 7 years. But what I've had to put up with for 7 years is this answer. He was there on the weekend and he watched the game. D-La have 7 under-19s in the seniors. If you go back and listen to the 100 and however many episodes he was on this podcast, every time we talk about D-La, Brian Waldron, we're just very young. They're just kids. They're just young. It'll take some time to develop. These kids have been young for 7 years. I don't know where they're getting their age from, but honestly.
Generally you work backwards from when you were born.
But
That's generally how
for
the age
some
thing
reason,
works.
it's like they're young, and then they're younger, and then they're younger. They're not getting any older, these young kids that Brian Waldron has talked about.
Well, it's not just Brian, because I got a message from Hugo Higginbotham on the Saturday night who was talking about Corey Mackey, another one of the under-19s for D-La, who was
young.
near their best player
he was
on
best of
debut.
field on the weekend.
Corey will be in the under-19s for about the next 9 years. if you
Antonio
ask.
Giampa, another one who's
Yep.
not even 18 yet.
Antonio Giampa.
Yeah. We
This
talked
week's-
about him last week.
This week's VAFA Rising Star nominee,
oh, well
Antonio
done.
Giampa.
So I'm having a bit of fun, but if I can just be serious on that point for a moment, and I think this is a feather in the cap of the De La Salle boys. Yes, granted they're young, but you get the opportunity to play 7 kids from your under-19 program in A-grade football this year. The way it's looking, they're probably going back to Premier B at this point, barring, they win 4 or 5 games in the back half of the season. That'll hold them in good stead if they're able to hold on to those kids for the next 12 to 24 months. And that's not to be downgrading to them. They will get themselves right with these kids. There is no better way for these kids to develop than playing together as a core group.
So Antonio Giampa, a great example of that. He's 17 years old. We talked about him last week. Still at school at Mazenod. Rob Amendola teaches him at Mazenod, which is how he ended up at De La Salle. 32 possessions last week in his second senior game as a wing half-back, and then another 21 on the weekend. So he's our VAFA Anytime Fitness Rising Star men's nominee for round 6. He's come through the Oakley under-8s, Bentley, East Sandringham. Last year he was at Ashwood in the Oakley Chargers. played the first couple of games in the under-19s this season, has now played the last 3 in the seniors. And I tell you what, he is a player to watch. Moves beautifully, uses the ball superbly, and is just that prototype modern-day player. On the women's side this week, our VAFA Anytime Fitness Rising Star nominee for round 6 is Hannah Foran from Ormond. 18-year-old. She started with the St Kilda Bears under-16s in 2022, then on to St Kilda City, Sandy Dragons last year, and she's polled best player votes in 5 of 6 games for Ormond's Division 3 senior team this year, including 4 goals against Paran in round 3. So congratulations to Antonio Giampa and Hannah Foran, our Rising Star nominees for Anytime Fitness for round 6.
Antonio Giampa only turned 17 in March this year, which is a remarkable stat.
He is a talent.
The other one I wanted to shout out before we move on from DLR is Tom Filipovic. He's 21 himself. He'd played a lot of halfback in previous seasons.
Tom, just very young.
But the availability issue that they had with Christian Algeria, of course, playing for Collingwood VFL.
Just very young.
So the back-to-back DLR best and fairest winner.
You need a therapist.
I need more than a therapist.
Oh, you do. This is so ingrained, Paddy.
But Tom, on the weekend, his highest rated game of the year, has made the switch to the midfield. 26 disposals, 14 contested possessions, 11 tackles. So he's the kind of player, Joey, as you mentioned, who's benefiting from this exposure at top flight.
There is one game left before we take a break and move over to Premier B. That is the University Blues and Old Haileybury. They've become our surprise packet, the ones to watch. Daniel Ward's boys, and they got it done again on the weekend.
And a little bit like D. Larcelle, Matty Smith left to bemoan just periods of the game where they have control, but they don't put it on the scoreboard, and then they lose control in the game. And it's been a bit of a recurring theme, as it has been for Blacks. In fact, as we discussed with Campbell Moorfield, the bottom 5 teams all have this same issue where they have periods of the game where they have control, but if you don't put it on the scoreboard, you know at some stage the momentum is going to flip, and then the opposition go and bang 3 or 4 on in a hurry. And the Blues actually led this game by 3 points, 16 points and 9 points at the first 3 changes, but couldn't quite shake the Bloods and just get away to a big enough lead. They remain within striking distance. 1 goal kicked in the third term. It was Andreas Stefanakis at the 24-minute mark, got them back within 9 points. So it was a low-scoring game. The final term, though, then belonged to the Bloods. They took control around the contest. They converted that into territory, kicked 5 unanswered goals. They blew past the Blues and powered away in the end to a 21-point win. Their 3rd in a row, ensuring they retain their top 4 position. Andreas Stefanakis, another 4 goals, 17 for the season. Josh Gasparini, his run of form continued, another 34 touches on the back of 40 last week, 22 contested, 5 tackles, 8 clearances, 6 inside 50s, 7 rebound 50s. That's a guy who's working hard in both directions. James Stewart bobbed up and kicked 3 for the Blues. Darcy Churgwin deserves a shout out. He continues to lead the competition's disposal count. He had another 31 to go with his 11 clearances and 9 tackles, and I'm sure he'd be on half's list.
I'm seeing a bit of a trend form here with the Bloods where they sort of hold with the team for a while. They might be down in the game and then they can flip the switch and just
they did
pile
it to
on
Collegians,
goals.
didn't they?
And they did it to D-Lar. Yeah, that's the way. There's a little bit of Sydney 2024 about them because they've got that real dynamic set up ahead of the footy that when they can possess the ball, get control through the middle of the ground and get repeat entries, they score heavily. And that's how I think they're winning games at the moment. They did it on the weekend, though, without Ollie Houghton, who was suspended.
And Daniel Ward's been around footy enough to know, though, that is a vulnerability. That's a potential weakness. So he cannot rest on that because, they gave up some easy goals in the first half. The Blues kicked 7 on them to half-time. And that is a concern. They dominated in the third quarter. They couldn't put the score on the board themselves. And then obviously they were up for the fight in the last term and it was a brave win and they kept the Blues goalless in the second half. But he admits that they still have lots of improvement areas and they look forward to taking on St Kevin's next week. And that's the challenge. When you're playing against those best teams in the competition, you can't just have those lulls in games and trust that you're going to come storming home because they do definitely have the talent and the ability to whack on score in a hurry. But you just, against the best teams in the competition, you just can't rely on that happening. And Matt Smith said it was one of the most disappointing losses for the year to date. Such a promising first half. They didn't put it on the scoreboard, but to Haileybury's credit, they sucked the life out of the game in the third term, kept it skinny, forced a scrap, capitalised off the back of it. And they've got to respond this week against Zabs to the Blues.
Yeah, I think Old Haileybury would be happy that the fact that they've played Old Brighton, they've played the Old Zaverians, they found out they're close enough and they've been able to bank 4 wins while they're not quite playing their best footy. Another big test. This St Kevin's game, I think this will tell us the most, I think, about the Bloods that we'll learn from this opening half of the season about where they're at. Because Brighton opening 2 weeks of the season, they went down by 47 points, were competitive. They probably would have backed themselves in to win the game against the Zabs. They were ahead for much of that game.
Yep.
Now it's third time lucky against a team that should be contending for the premiership. How good are they?
Yeah, it's a body of work, isn't it, really? If they can do well against St Kevin's, even if they don't win that game at TH King, but they get close as they did against Zabs, you would say, okay, they're within sight of the top teams. No one's inside of Brighton at the moment. They're 2 games clear of everyone else. So put them to one side. But that next tier, which is, I know I mentioned tiers, sorry, Paddy, that next group, that next collection, which is St Kevin's and Zabs,
Yes.
then you sort of got the 2 teams underneath that we're waiting,
surprised by.
Yeah, surprised and waiting to just see exactly where they sit. And that's St Bernard's and Old Haileybury.
Yeah.
And then Collegians aren't as bad as the win-loss record suggests because of all those tight losses. But this is an opportunity for Old Haileybury to just frank their credentials up against the best teams in the competition. Because I'm certain that St Bernard's and Old Haileybury are confident that they are good enough to go against the best teams in the competition and they deserve to be in that top 4. But the reality is there's 5 there at the moment. Only 4 are going to make it.
Absolutely. And what you've talked about a couple of times already this morning, there is a 2-game gap that is so vital when it comes to the back half of the season that not that you ever want to drop a game, but you can afford to. If you have a down day, you've got the buffer. Scotch, I think, are also starting to lose percentage. So 2-game gap plus percentage is going to make it very tough when it comes to a team we thought was going to be a top 4 contender. But I'm looking forward to what the next few weeks unfolds and how that shapes as we head to the back half of the season. We'll take a break and you're up next, Paddy, with the Premier B report. And we've got Mickey Nichols from Old Geelong joining us.
Hey guys, at GYG we never compromise on the quality of our food. That's why we only serve 100% free-range chicken. We're on a mission to reinvent fast food because who said fast food had to be bad food? Love ya.
Footy's at the heart of Victoria, but gambling harm is creeping onto our fields. That's where the Real Stakes steps in. Backed by the Victorian Amateur Football Association, the Real Stakes helps local clubs tackle the risk of online sports betting head on. Get the tools, spark the conversation, and protect what really matters, your mates. Visit realstakes.com.au to find out more. This is For the Love of the Game, the official podcast of the Amos. We're here all thanks to Mekwacare, turning our attention to Premier B men's now, and there's a couple of intriguing results, Paddy, that we can go through in a moment. But I was taken by one at Como Park, which we talked about last week in the lead up to the game. And at quarter time, I was pretty comfortable with what the green and gold were doing. But that's not how the game played out after that.
No, it wasn't. It was a fire and brimstone address from Nick Dixon, who's not usually that kind of coach, that got his team back up and about for Will Horsfall's 100th game for the club, the skipper. It's a cracking finish to this contest. You can watch it all play out on VAFA TV as the light faded at Como Park with a late start. Got ahead at the 29-minute mark, and then at the 34-minute mark, kicked a goal to seal it. That player to kick that winning goal or sealing goal was Mickey Nichols, and he joins us now on the For the Love of the Game podcast. Hello, Mickey. Good morning to you.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are we?
Oh, pretty good. Not as well as your club's going, though. Take us through that final quarter. It was a tense finish. You got a bit of revenge after last year's semi-final defeat.
Yeah, it was a fairy tale for me, who last year obviously had a kick after the siren in that final against Old Trinity and couldn't kick 30 metres and it dropped short. So to kick one on the siren and have it actually go through the goals felt good. But let me say, it wasn't me that sealed the game. It was Connor Dixon about 5 minutes earlier that put us up, and ice in his veins. That kid is special. And probably Jimmy Adams can be mentioned in that line, and Will Horsfall as well, the skipper. Those three played a huge part in that last quarter to get us that win.
I gave you the opportunity to pump your own tyres up, but I respect that you gave the credit elsewhere, mate. Take me through what happened at quarter time, because I rang Nick Dixon across the weekend. And
I thought you were going to say you rang him at quarter time.
Not quite. And he describes himself as a player's coach, which is natural considering he was a player with you lot a few years ago. But he said that he did have to reach into the kit bag and try and inject some emotion into the group. Can you take us inside the spray, I suppose?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, Nick Dixon is an incredible coach. He played with us, and a lot of the playing group has played with him before and watched him play. So we have a great understanding of, and he has a great understanding of what we're going through out there when we're down, the ebbs and flows of playing football. So he has a great grasp on what he needs to say and when he needs to say it to get us fired up. And quarter time was no different. He definitely said, look Will Horsfall in the face and say, was that good enough for your skipper who's, battled for this club, goes back with a flight every contest for a quarter of football? And it obviously wasn't from the boys, and that got us moving in the right direction. And then we obviously had a better quarter in the second, and at halftime, Nick addressed that, yes, we were good, but do not forget what we just did in that first quarter and how we let down one of our club's great players. And that again kicked us into that second drive and gave us another good start in the third.
Mickey, you guys were there and thereabouts last year. It feels like you might have just taken the next step in 2025. Do you feel that way? Do you feel you're a better team than you were 12 months ago? And if so, in what areas?
Area number one is a kid called Jimmy Adams. He is in. I think he had 14 clearances on the weekend and 20 odd contested balls. So he's come into the midfield. You've got Sam Hodge also in the midfield. He's an absolute bull of a human. So I think our midfield has gotten stronger. You've obviously retained Jack Sheridan and Harry Kohler, who are, top flight talent that are always going to be mentioned. But the fact that Jimmy Adams is now getting his senior games in and absolutely got the confidence now to start dominating is definitely helping us out. Obviously the back line is strengthened slightly, but we've had some injuries down there, so we'll see how the back line stacks up. But you got people like Hamish Pearson, who enjoys his horse racing, but also enjoys the game of football, and he's very good at the intercept marking.
Speaking of dominant, Jack Sheridan on the weekend. I don't know if you saw his stat line. 83 hit-outs, and they won the clearances 67-47.
That's actually the third week in a row he's had 60 or more hit-outs in a game. He is just on a different level in the ruck.
He's pretty special, Mickey.
No, I didn't notice him out there. I don't think he had that much.
He's only 6'11".
No, that performance from him, and I think I went up to him at every quarter time break and just said, wow, you were really putting the boys on your back and helping us out here. Even in the first quarter, he was our standout performer there when no one else was performing. He just put his body on the line all day. And in the wet as well, he's remarkably clean for a big fella.
Never been short of ruckman at Old Geelong, so we're talking about Jack Sheridan at the moment. Before him, it was McGregor Cameron, was it not?
McGregor Cameron, I don't know. I actually took a spell in the ruck when Jack was out gallivanting in 2019, so I feel like I should be mentioned there as well.
Okay, there you go.
In the ruck alumni at Old Geelong, we're speaking of one of the greats.
Apologies, I thought you were just a great goal kicker, Mickey,
mate.
but you're clearly better than that.
No, I took a spell in 2019. We didn't have many ruck stocks and some of my darkest days in football.
Now, Mick, I'm not sure if you listened to the pre-season predictions we did on Premier B, but both Paddy and Jace thought this section would be the tightest of the whole Amos competition across the 6 men's sections. And as I look at the ladder, you got Old Ivanhoe with 5-1, and then you are part of a block of 4 teams that's sitting 4-2. It dead set exactly what the boys thought it would be. What's it feel like when you go out there week in, week out? Any team on any given day can probably get the points.
Just nerve-wracking, to be honest. Like, you don't have many weekends where you go, how good's this? Going to kick, bag of 5 or more goals. You know that you're going to have to put your body on the line every week, and it can go either way. So full focus every quarter, and if you don't, well, you see what happened in quarter one, the teams can just jump you.
Before we let you go, Mickey, I believe you've also got another 100-game milestone coming up, and I think there's a host of them coming up in the next few weeks. I think it's Matt Bird who's up this weekend, and there might be a few others. Take us through Matty Bird's career.
So Matthew Kim Jong-Bird, an incredible backman for the club, also an on-field leader. That his on-field leadership is probably what makes him such a star. He's a smaller fella like myself. We don't get over 6 foot, so not too much attention above there. But his ability to read the flight of the ball, get to the feet of his larger defenders, and then he is so silky, left, right, no problems at all. So congratulations to him on 100 games, but also Tim, the Twig Redmore. Different type of operator, more of an athletic baby giraffe sort of thing. He's been playing. He's going to come out and play his 100th game as well. So both him and Matthew Bird will be lifted on the shoulders after the game, and hopefully it's a win.
Mickey, your goal that you kicked earlier in the season where you booted it into the forward half and then sprinted down into the pocket and beat a couple and snapped the goal right on the siren. For mine, it's probably goal of the year in the VAFA right now. I can't think of any that's better. And it went viral, so it's cost you a bit in the fines department, I would imagine.
I don't think the boys have realised what the traction it's getting online.
Oh,
luckily,
it's had thousands.
It's
had thousands and thousands of views and likes.
Yeah, no, look, it's a special goal for me. I was actually, almost shouldn't have happened because when Matthew Wallace, he's the one that actually kicked it down at the forward line. When he grabbed it, I was yelling at him to hold, give us a chance to flood back into the forward line. But he did. He just punted an absolute torp down there. And unfortunately, it was kind of, I'm going to have to get on my bike and sprint after it. And I was probably about halfway down the field when I was like, all right, I'm not going to make this. I'm not that type of guy. I'm not that fast. But my little sister, and you can hear it in the audio, she's screaming from the sidelines and yelling out for me to get that ball. And I had to put my head down and keep going because I didn't want to let her down. So big thanks to my sister for, willing me on there.
Oh, she can pay half the fine.
There you go. What I really like there,
exactly
Mickey,
right.
is that you've advocated for yourself as the goal of the year winner, mate. So that's exactly the kind of performance that we hope for the love of the game for the players that we get on. So congratulations.
Mate, if you don't pump up your own tyres, Mickey, who's going to do it for you?
No, exactly right. The boys aren't doing it. Look, I'm getting around the boys. I think I mentioned Jimmy Adams a couple of times, Harry Cole, Sheridan, who he plays.
Harry
Look,
Coy?
they're all
Is he now known as the Fish?
Yeah,
after,
the Fish, yes.
After Dylan Humphries, our cinch man, misspelled his name in the stats sheet last week?
Exactly right. He's the best fish in the pond, that kid. He's special. Absolute little koi, Japanese koi.
What is the vibe amongst the group like at the moment? It seems like you've got a pretty tight group of players right across, in fact, the men and the women's programs.
Yeah, exactly right. I'll speak on that because Old Geelong is doing an incredible job to mix the two playing groups, the women's and the men's. And that's what helps us play better on field, is that knowing that we're going to have supporters from all teams, thirds, women's reserves, women's seniors, and the men's reserves and seniors, obviously. And we connect really well on and off the field, and we hold ourselves to a standard to that as well. So, like, even for an example, I was putting just a player poll into one of the chats this week, and it was just to get dinner numbers for Thursday night. And one of the girls messaged me and said, "Hey, you're leaning too far into the boys' side there. Like, I'd only put little snippets about the men's program and little jokes about the men in there." And she held me down to say, "No, the women that are also coming to Thursday night, put something in about them and make it fair." And it's that type of standard that we look for that is driving the on-field and off-field camaraderie.
And from a motivational perspective, girls are playing in the top tier this year for the first time. Guys are playing in Premier B and aspiring to get up to that top tier. The program's driving each other on, Mickey, and even what you're known for. Like Old Geelong, traditionally, when I've asked around about them over the years, it's been, they're a very social club, they have a great time, etc. But it sort of feels like you've gone beyond that. You still are that, but now there's this steely resolve to also be a really good football club that plays in the top divisions in both men's and women's and wins games and wins flags.
Exactly right. And Jack Cameron has done an incredible job with the women's program, getting them up into the top flight. And the boys want to be the same. They have obviously traditionally had all the attention, and the girls have gone, "Hey, look how good we are. Watch this." Gone about their business, dominating, and they're doing very well up in that top flight. You obviously got your Brooke McKays, your Sophie Rothfields, and a number of other girls that are just dominating in that league. And the boys are looking at that, seeing them train so well, and we want to be the same. So we're holding up each other to a really good standard.
Mickey, thanks for your time and good luck this weekend at home against Old Ivanhoe.
Absolute pleasure, gentlemen. Thanks so much.
Great to speak to Mickey Nichols from Old Geelong. And as you said, Jason, have got a big game this weekend against Old Ivanhoe. We'll get to that in a moment. It was an 8-point win for them over Old Trinity. Old Carey beat the Hampton Rovers. Old Ivanhoe did it comfortably over Fitzroy. The Old Melburnians beat the Wellers. And Caulfield knocked off Con and Williamstown. Is that where you want to start, Paddy?
Yeah, let's start with Satsy Boy. He was pretty stoked with his performance. A 19-point victory over the CYs. Just the one behind, though, in the final quarter from Caulfield. So Williamstown forced to try and complete a comeback again. It's the second time in 3 weeks where they've had to do that, where they've been 50 points or so down. So Contazoglu is aware of that challenge, trying his best to work on it. It's just a bit of an issue where their final quarters are their best quarters by quite a distance. So they're having no issues running out games, but they understand that if you're late to start against teams like Caulfield and then 2 weeks ago against Old Ivanhoe, you're going to be too far away to try and make a comeback. So a big win for the Grammarians. Julian Dobos is putting together a few really good weeks of footy, both in the forward line and in the ruck, and also Matty Clarkson off halfback. He's one to watch as we head towards Big V selection for the Prem B Divisional squad. Another 36 disposals and a game-high 171 Premier Data rating points off half-back.
Speaking of the Big V, great that you mentioned that, Paddy, because Big V club nominations are open right now. So for clubs from Premier B to D3 and in the women's comp and the men's comp and the under-19s, please, if you're at Clubland and you're a club secretary or GM or coach listening to this, Get your nominations in now. The form is via the portal, etc. Make sure, if you've got players out there that you want to put on the watch list, just because they're nominated, of course, doesn't guarantee you get a spot in the team. But, Joey, the coaches, it's such a broad competition. They need a short list. They need a watch list to be able to go out and follow some of these guys. So if you've got, and girls, if you've got players out there that you feel are worthy of a big V jumper, put them on the list. Get them out there.
Absolutely. Yes. And how about we put you on the spot now, Paddy? Give us a couple of names in Premier B that should be considered.
Well, there's one man called Jordan Buzzertool, who is a superstar, of course, listed at Essendon VFL, who copped the double tag on the weekend.
Double tag?
But still worked through it, which is an important part of his
Caulfield played with
development.
16 players.
They did, yeah. No. So he just had some work put into him. Joey McClelland was one of the taggers, or one of the guys who put some work into Buzzertool. Also, Sam McInerney doing some work. Okay. Still had his 29 disposals, 24 contested, but Sats was pretty happy with how they impacted him. I'm calling him second-term Sats now, by the way, because they haven't lost a second quarter for this season, as opposed to Wet Sail Willie, who have won their last 5 final quarters.
He's been working on this. I prefer this to the tiered system.
It's a lot easier to understand.
A lot easier to understand for us simpletons.
I'd like to nominate 3 players out of Old Ivanhoe, and you can tell me whether I'm going here. Alex Murkov, Patrick Naish, and Will Murphy. Can we take the Old Ivanhoe midfield out of Premier B and put him into Big V jumpers?
Now, it depends on whether Alex Murkov is still on a VAFA list or whether he is on an AFL list.
Well, May 28 is the mid-season draft.
By Big V contention, because little birdie tells me that...
he's got a red and black jumper on? Potentially?
The little birdie's spoken the same thing to you, have you? A couple of the clubs out there at AFL land are asking around about Alex Murkov.
It's him v the handlebars, isn't it? Braden Crossley, when it comes to the ruck divisions at the Bombers?
You would think so. You would think they'd be looking at both of those guys. Cooper Keogh was certainly on
the
list.
Yes.
Coburg, and he got injured. But certainly Alex Murkov will generate attention.
I mentioned Alex's name because 6 games, 6 times he's been put in the best at Old Ivanhoe, and he is a cut above when it does come to Premier B, but he's an outstanding ruck.
Yeah, and in wet weather footy as well for the Hoers in their game against Fitzroy, he's actually a really good and adept wet weather ruck, Jared Geeshan was telling me. He understands pretty quickly that the game's about territory, it's about getting the ball as far away from the contest so they can impact. The benefit for the Hoers was that they were able to bring back Rowan McKenzie and Toby McLean. So Rowan spent some time at the Northern Bull Ants. Toby McLean spent some time out injured. They're both really clean players. You mentioned the engine room, Joey, and the Big V nominees that might come from there. 107 disposals won between Toby McLean, Paddy Naish and Bill Murphy. So 37 for McLean, 36-2 for Paddy Naish, and 34-3 for Billy Murphy. The reigning Premier B best and fairest.
Nick Dixon will be spending plenty of time in his planning this week as to how you shut those guys down or try to nullify there as much as you can. Hey, Old Melburnians beating Old Camberwell by 5 goals. Did that shock you?
Look, it shocks you when you look at the ladder coming into this contest, but if you look at it the quarter by quarter, this is my favourite stat. Coming into this weekend, the Redlegs were 1-4, yet had won 13 of their 20 quarters, which was the equal most across the competition, which indicates just how close the competition is. 3 of its losses up to that point coming by under a kick. So that's how close Nathan Brown's squad was. Just needed the ball to bounce their way a couple of times. Thankfully, he didn't quite have the anxiety this weekend. Adam Richardson put the team 21 points clear in the third, and the margin will not close to beneath 20 points from that point onwards. The Old Melburnians did a good job of holding up against the Wellers. Jimmy Allen played his 150th game, of course, the skipper of Old Camberwell, 23 disposals and a goal. Neil Connell, the coach of Old Camberwell, saying that they were clean around the contest. The OMs made them pay from turnovers. Despite being down by 41 points at the 10-minute mark of the second quarter, the Wellers were able to close the gap a little bit. The OMs then kicked 4 on the trot across the latter stages of the third and early stages of the fourth to effectively kill the contest. So a bit of a reward for effort for Brownie and his boys.
And Premier B's the gift that just keeps on giving. We'll do tips a little later on in the show, but just looking ahead to round 7, you've got Caulfield Grammarians versus Old Camberwell, which will be a belter. Old Geelong versus Old Ivanhoe, which will be a fantastic game as well. And Willie CYMS against Old Carey. So 3 absolute rippers there to look forward to. Tips to come a little later in the show.
Let's take a break. When we come back, Brayden May is going to join us because I want to talk a little bit about Premier C. I want to get an update on how Mitch Brown's tracking towards the 100 because you two reckon he's got a shoe in. So I want to just hear where he's up to. Plus, there's still plenty more to come on For the Love of the Game. Are you looking to grow your business? William Buck are more than just accountants and advisors who can develop strategic growth plans for your business. With over 125 years' experience, William Buck has expertise in navigating through challenging times and has been working closely with the VAFA community, creating positive change for individuals, businesses and community organisations. William Buck's team of specialist advisors work collaboratively, providing you with 360 support. Schedule a complimentary consultation today by visiting williambuck.com.
Hey guys, at GYG we never compromise on the quality of our food. That's why we only serve 100% free-range chicken. We're on a mission to reinvent fast food, because who said fast food had to be bad food? Love ya.
This is For the Love of the Game, the official podcast of the Amos. Time now to turn our attention to the newshound from Community TV and the Herald Sun, Brayden May. Hello, Brayden.
Hello, guys. How are we?
Going well. Let's look at Premier C, and as I go over some of the notes, you're telling me that the Glen Ira Old McKinnon boys have had to farewell a club favourite over the weekend.
Yeah, which came as a bit of a shock. You don't really see that in mid-season, do you? That way your better players moves on, but it's not. They did it in style. They got on the board. I think that's the most important thing. Like, they got their first win of the season, which wasn't easy. They did it the hard way, but Lachlan Myers, he's moving back to Wagga Wagga, which has become a bit of a hunting ground for the footy club, as I'm sure a lot of VAFA followers are aware, where they bring a lot of guys out. They all play together, but he's heading home with his partner. The Griffins were supported well by Sean Bass. He was best of field in the win with 5. But, yeah, it's great to see Guy Martin get his first win. It's really important at this stage of the season as we head into European flu season.
Yeah, Tullamarine Flu's coming around. So it was a 1-goal win too, so it was pretty tight in the end. It was close in that game. They were 3 goals down at half-time, Glen Ira, so that's a win that's going to give them some confidence.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, depending where you were on Saturday, goals were hard to come by. It was a real taste of winter footy. The rain came in sideways. It was wet. It was wild. And I think it was a defender's dream, just those games where the ball's not coming in, lace out to the full forward. So it was a matter of who could put the score on the board and make the most of their chances out there.
And sadly for us, Jace, as I look across the Premier C competition with that windy and wet weather, Big Mitch Brown, just the 1 goal in a score of 100.
Just 1 goal, was it?
Sad
So
news.
Ajax and Parkdale still remain at 6 and zip, top of the ladder. They're 1 game clear of St Bede's Mentone at 5 and 1. Beaumaris at 4 and 2. That's our top 4, Brayden. Then you've got Pegs outside on 3 and 3. Mazenod and Parkside on 2 and 4. Marcelin and Glen Ira on 1 and 5 now. Glen Ira up alongside Marcelin in the battle to avoid relegation, and Paran at 0 and 6, still yet to win a game in Premier C this season. But a couple of good games in Premier C this week. Ajax 33-point winners over Parkside. That's a good win. They just keep on rolling. Parkdale massive winners over Paran. That's a 71-point win. St Bede's and Pegs, that was an interesting and important game. 10-point win in the end of St Bede's Mentone. Really important.
If you bring up the round 7 fixture, I think we're then heading into round 8 with 2 teams at the top of the tree. Mm-hmm. Parkdale and Ajax. So Jerry Green Reserve on the 31st of May is the one you do want to pencil into your calendars.
Assuming there's no banana peel this week, Parkdale play Mazenod. They'll go in favourites there. Sorry, Parkside play Mazenod. They'll go in favourites there. And Ajax play Glen Ira Old McKinnon, and obviously they'll go in favourites in that one as well. So, yes, that would set it all up for round 8. Probably the game of the week this week, Beaumaris and Pegs in Premier C this week. So Beaumaris sitting in 4th, Pegs sitting in 5th, and an opportunity for Pegs to close the gap on the top 4. So that's probably the game to watch this week, Brayden.
Yeah, 100%. If that gap grows, it might be an early call, but 2 games back for Pegs outside the top 4, it is a long way back, especially with what we probably are seeing with the competition, with the top 4 or 5 almost dividing themselves away from the bottom 5.
Let's move on to Division 1, and a third of the way through the season. It's time to label Ormond as the premiership favourites. Do you think, Brayden? I know you had him high on your power rankings.
Yeah, I think they are at the moment, but I think it's something we'll have to retouch it again in the next 3 weeks. Obviously, beat a really good Preston Bullland side by 24 points on the weekend, but their next 3 games are Oakley, Kew and Brunswick. If they go through that undefeated, I think they'd have to beat the short price favourites to win the flag. But this young side, they just keep getting better and better, and there's just so many guys that it's so exciting to watch. Like you touch on someone like Mason Thatcher, he was playing under 16 footy last year, and he's still, when he's getting in the best down at Ormond, he goes and plays under 17s on the Sunday, which is just a remarkable effort. Like 2 games in a weekend, especially in a high quality side. Ben Williams produced his best game of the season on the weekend, so they're in really good form, and I think they are going to take some beating.
This is what we need for Ton Watch, Paddy. We need blokes to play 2 games on a Saturday, roll out in the thirds, and then roll up in the seniors in the afternoon. You can kick like 20 for the afternoon. We'll get there.
I think if it's as wet as it was last weekend, we might need a few guys to play 2 or 3 games across a weekend, just for those
that doesn't
3 games
count.
stretch.
It does count.
Yes, it does, Joey.
Back goals for the year.
Oakley 4-2 in 5th place, Kew 5-1 in 2nd place, and Brunswick 3-3 in 6th place, all with healthy percentages. So we're going to find out a fair bit about the Monders, you'd think.
And speaking of Brunswick, Brayden, as Paddy mentioned, sitting in 6th position, but top 4 on the horizon, and having Preston and Oakley both lose helped.
Yeah, most definitely. I think, as coaches will say, you can only control what's in front of you, and they did exactly that on the weekend, like picking up an impressive winner. I think it's nice to see Fletcher Banfield, who came across from the neighbours, the North Brunswick Bulls, Whitlam Bishop, down from Queensland. He's a player that keeps impressing. I'd quite enjoyed seeing Rowan Hogan-Burke in just his third game of the season. He was super impressive. But they just decided it's probably going to be one of those things where they might find their best footy in the second half of the year. 3-3 is probably a good platform to build off. Like, obviously, you want to be ahead of the ledger. But when you're 3-3, you've brought in 7 or 8 new guys. It does take time to build that chemistry, and those little things that when they play more consistent footy in the second half of the year, we've obviously had Anzac Day, we've had Easter, we've got the long weekend coming up, so it's been a bit of a stop-start for Brunswick and everyone around them. So I'm very keen to see them as one of the big improvers come part 2 of the season.
Good name for commentary, Rowan Hogan-Burke.
Sort of same cadence as Wolfender.
Yeah, similar.
Good.
Oh, you two working your cadence on a Tuesday
I'll
morning.
explain it to you later.
If you could, that'd be helpful. Brayden, Division 2, St John's. I don't know how much cadence is in that name, but they had a great win on the weekend.
Yeah, come from behind win against Hawthorn. Probably a bit earlier to say, but it's really important for securing their Division 2 safety for next season. Obviously, they've established a bit of a gap over Hawthorn, Aquinas, and Canterbury, the side below them now. They've got 3 wins, 2 games clear of relegation. They've really taken to this level really well, and I think the club's done a really good job. They hit the reset button a couple of years ago. They brought in some experienced guys last season to help them get out of Division 3. Now they've brought in the young guys. They've taken some steps forward. Obviously, young guys, they get to that 20-30 senior game mark and they really start to improve. But James Day, Aidan Ungar were 2 of the better players. It's a big win, and it's good to see when the promoted clubs do really hold their own, because it is not easy to come up through the division. We all know just how big the gap is from each division, and it's fantastic, and let's hope they keep winning.
Absolutely, let's hope they keep winning. The percentage might be a factor as we get to the back half of the season. The Old Yarra Cobras, now they're going really nicely, sitting on top of the table, yet to suffer a defeat this season.
No, it's not surprising. It is past me, to be honest. Like they were hit by injury hard last year, and when you lose key players to injury, there's only so much depth can do at times, and that's no disrespect to the guys that stepped up. But when you're losing your better players, it does make it really tough for the coaching staff. But an 11-point win over West Brunswick, the side who came down from Division 1 with them. But I wouldn't read too much into this result in terms of Old Yarra Cobra being streets ahead of the Magpies. Obviously, a close game, but I think both these sides, if they finish in the top 4, they are more than capable of winning the premiership and winning promotion as well. Anthony Rasso been in fantastic form. He booted 5. Anthony Lamana playing some good footy as well, in the better players again for the Cobras. It's really exciting for them. And it's nice to see that Coach Nathan Monaco is getting the best out of their side. They were open and honest in pre-season, and I think the best part is when you put the heat on each other and it translates into good footy, that's all you can ask.
Yeah, as I look at the Maggies, Brayden, 2 losses this year, but both coming by 12 points or fewer. So they're certainly around the mark. And then you look at their wins and they've run out pretty handy victors over Aquinas, Canterbury and South Melbourne and St John's earlier in the season.
Looking ahead to Division 3, blockbuster top of the table clash this week, Brayden. Powerhouse 6-0 against Wattle Park 6-0.
It's the one we've been waiting for, haven't it? And what I learned about Powerhouse in the last 24 hours, had a chat to Nick Cox. He's an absolute ripping guy. They've got a great leader down there. He's in a first season of coaching Powerhouse. He's been forced to make, on average, probably 5 or 6 changes a week to this side. And that's despite they've had guys go on holidays, they've had injuries, but they just keep winning. Obviously, they've probably played 3 of the lower sides so far, but they picked up a good 4-point win over Albert Park, who at their best are showing that they're more than capable of challenging the better side. So they've only won 2 games, but the Falcons are one to keep an eye on, especially when they play more of the sides around them. But yeah, I'm really excited by this game. Powerhouse. And let's hope they get their forward line up and firing. They had no Michael Timmins or Jack Taylor-Evans on the weekend, the 2 leading goal kickers for them this season. Harry Officer's another name to keep an eye on. But, yeah, if they get their full side on the park, it will be their strongest this season yet.
As Josh Herriott used to say, a game like this would be a ding-dong battle. Now, as I look at the ladder, it looks like a big gulf at the top between what we're seeing in the first few spots, Brayden, and what we're seeing at the bottom of Division 3.
Yeah, from my point of view, Albert Park's the one that may keep an eye on them. Latrobe Uni, but they suffered a big loss on the weekend. But that top 4, they just look a class above. You've got Powerhouse, Wattle Park, North Brunswick Bulls and Richmond Central. Just looks like on their day so far that they are going to be the better side. But again, we'll see what happens through the middle part of the season. There's more injuries, the colder months, the wetter ground, maybe some more injuries, but I think it's going to come down to those 4s. But let's hope we're wrong, and I hope Albert Park or Latrobe can really storm home and put some pressure on those spots. But yeah, at the moment, I think you'd have Powerhouse and Wattle Park as your clear favourites, but it's one to keep an eye on. One thing I just want to touch on that was quite quirky from the weekend, Powerhouse actually ran out with 8 Irishmen in their senior side.
Right. 8?
Yes, they've got 8. So some of these guys usually play reserves, but the reserves coach has a strong connection to them, and he's brought them down to the club. But yeah, Ireland's been a real recruiting zone for the Powerhouse Footy Club.
All around that Albert Park area, actually. Like there's all the Albert Park-based clubs have got lots of Irish players. It's Albert Park Falcons, I think, you've got a bunch of them as well.
Yes.
It's just become, obviously they come in, they backpack, they live in St Kilda or around that area. And then 1 or 2 of them come down to the club and they bring all their friends. And so it's become a massive recruiting area for Irish players all around that Albert Park, South Melbourne area. Lots of Irish players running around in both the men's and the women's comps, which is fantastic.
Good on them. Good on them. They had a couple of lean years, Powerhouse, so it's nice to see them performing as well as they are. Just before we let you go, Brayden, what are we writing about this week on the Herald Sun website?
Well, a bit of everything. It's hard to keep up. Injuries are starting to strike. I think it's worth checking in with probably Wattle Park as well ahead of the big clash this weekend. Hopefully going to check in with St. Bede's Mentone. They had a couple of debutants on the weekend of club greats and assistant coaches. There's a lot going on at the moment. I'm very interested this weekend to keep an eye on St. Bernard's via Old Scotch as well. The Snow Dogs haven't won at home. They keep winning away, but it's just... And Old Scotch obviously need to get the premiership defence firing.
Oh, yeah.
What possible interest could you have? It's St. Bernard's in a walkover.
St. Bernard's, I tell you what, they stay home like minestrone, St. Bernard's.
Oh, you got to start that again.
No, they're not.
You're going to start that again,
The St. Lobster Bisque, they are. They're travelling beautifully. Our KTV doubleheader this week, Community TV doubleheader, Brayden, St. Kevin's versus Old Haileybury down at TH King. Interesting game. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that is very interesting. I reckon let's find out what Old Haileybury are about. If they win this, I would not discount them from playing finals footy.
Big call, Brayden. Don't mind that early on a Tuesday morning.
Sitting in 4th at the moment. They're going pretty well.
Going very handily.
It's 3% behind St. Kevin's too, which we touched on a little bit earlier on. Brayden, thanks for jumping on and spending some time with us. We'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks very much, guys.
Great to spend some time with Brayden May from the Herald Sun and Community TV. Let's turn our attention to a section we've spent a bit of time discussing with Dale Christie because recently William Buck Premier Women's was regraded and Lauren Atkinson does some terrific work writing for the Ammo's website and she's been good enough to jump on and join us. Hello, Lauren.
Hello, how are we all?
Going very well. As I look at the William Buck Premier Women's ladder, it looks similar from a St. Kevin's and Old Scotch perspective, sitting inside the top 4. But I love that the Caulfield Grammarians have taken the heartache of last year's final series and turned it to gold so far. They're 6-0, sitting on top of the table.
Yeah, it's been really great to see what they're doing. I had some clear improvement across last year. Beat Q in that semi-final, fell into Old Scotch. But yeah, it looks like they're continuing building, and I'd say they're the front runners at the moment.
Lauren, you run out each week and play for Fitzroy. The Roy's sitting at 3-3 in 5th position, a game behind Beau Morris in 4th. What have you made of Fitzroy's season so far?
Yeah, I think we're tracking pretty well. It is quite hard to say just based off we haven't yet, but we have quite a young developing side. Forward line mid's got a bit of a different look this year. Pretty happy with how we're going. Just think we really need to work on some more four-quarter efforts. We seem to finish games. We've had a few slow starts, so hopefully going forward we can build on that.
And the weekend was an example of that. Watch that game on KTV. Old Scotch got the jump on you. You guys finished quite strongly, but probably didn't get full return for all the effort you put in on the scoreboard.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're just kind of last forward entry. We did have a few chances, but I think just their experience and they were so clean, especially in the wet weather footy. It was quite obvious. They didn't need much, and they just were able to punish us.
So to wrap up the ladder through 6 rounds, Paddy, Caulfield Grammarians at 24-6 and zip, a game clear of Scotch, Old Scotch and St Kevin's at 5-1, another game back to Beaumaris at 4-2, then another game back to Fitzroy in 5th at 3-3, Old Geelong's team at 3-2-1, and then West Brunswick, Williamstown, Q sitting in 9th. 9 teams now in the competition because obviously we had the regrading with Melbourne Uni and Old Yarra Cobras dropping down to Premier B.
Hey, look, I'm keen to get onto this Premier B competition because we had a draw on the weekend between Zavs and St Bede's Mentone, 46 apiece at Toorak Park.
Yeah, we did. That was an exciting one. So they're both sitting 6th and 7th on the ladder. Split them. St Bede's were a good side last year. We were in Prem B with them then. So it seems, I think they've lost some players. They've only got the one team this year, so maybe struggling with that a bit. Old Zav seems to have developed well this year. It was impressive to get the draw there, I think.
And Lauren, you do some writing with the Premier B sections. The new team on the block is the Port Melbourne Chargers. Was it their first loss of the year this weekend against Old Brighton, or their second one?
Second, they lost their first match against the Omelettes, Old Melburnians, by just less than a goal, I think.
That's
and
right.
then,
Bella Freeman, who works here at the VAFA HQ now, so she doesn't play for Old Melburnians anymore. It was her first ever game, and she stood up and kicked the winning goal in her first game for OMs against Port Melbourne. So they're 4-2 now, Lauren, but it's been a pretty decent start for a club that's come from nowhere.
Yeah, for sure. Being brand new, I think it would be hard to judge. I know that they did get a lot of the talent from collegians, but still being new, that's going to be a bit of a struggle. So really impressed with how they're going as well.
How impressed are you with Old Brighton? Because their women's program for a number of years has been very successful, and as it stands, 6-0 sitting on top of the Premier B ladder. Why aren't they playing in William Buck Premier Women's? Anyone got any clues why? They're very good, the Tunners.
Might be because they don't have a reserves team. Do they have a reserves team, Lauren? Because that's what you need to have to be in Premier Women. So it may be related to that as opposed to their strength.
Yeah, they don't have a reserves team. I think they could definitely compete if they did move up to William Buck. I think we'd have a good contest against them for sure, being Fitzroy.
And the arrival of Port Melbourne Chargers and also Westbourne, which is a relatively new program under Chris Grant, their second season. It's been great to have a couple of these new clubs come in, Lauren, that are specifically focused on women's footy. Both of those clubs are only women's clubs at this point in time, and they've both managed to find their feet pretty quickly and be competitive.
Yeah, it's really great to see. Westbourne, I know Chris Grant keeps saying that they're a young developing side, but I think they're doing really well, and they should, they'll look to keep improving across the year. I think they could challenge some of those top sides.
So the Premier B ladder, Old Brighton, as you mentioned earlier, 6 and zip atop, and then Port Melbourne Chargers 4-2 in second. Westbourne, Old Melburnians, Marcelin all at 3-3 from 3-5, and then at St Bede's, Old Zaverians, the Old Yarra Cobras, and the Muggers, Joey.
Looking ahead to round 7. Big game, huge game for Fitzroy this week, Lauren. Beaumaris versus Fitzroy. It's 4th versus 5th. What are you expecting from the Sharks?
It should be a tough contest. I think we've got a bit of a rivalry going with them, played them quite a few times over the years. I believe this week they're actually holding a commemorative match, shining bright for Holly and Bianca.
They are indeed.
It'll be a special day for sure, and I'm sure that they'll all be playing their best footy, so we'll have to bring ours as well, but definitely excited for that.
Keep an eye on vafa.com.au later in the week. We'll have a feature on this particular weekend. As you mentioned, Lauren, a really special weekend, shining a light on Bianca and Holly and celebrating their lives. It's going to be a very special day at Banksia Reserve.
That's at 2 o'clock on Saturday this weekend. Also from a head-to-head battle this weekend, you've got Old Scotch playing host to Caulfield.
Wow.
The top two teams.
massive
Maybe
game.
an early look at a grand final preview, although if you're St Kevin's listening to this, don't worry, we haven't completely ruled you out. Lauren, we will let you go. Thanks for jumping on and spending some time with us, and we'll catch up with you as the year unfolds.
Perfect. Thank you.
Tickets are now on sale for the VAFA's 2025 Big V Gala Dinner presented by City Power. It's a landmark event, the largest function the VAFA has ever staged, and it's celebrating 100 years of Big V representative football. This historic evening will serve as the official opening to the Rep Football Weekend, offering a unique opportunity to honour the legacy of the Big V and its enduring significance within the VAFA community. The Big V Gala Dinner will bring together past players, coaches, club representatives and supporters to reflect on a century of tradition, achievement and pride. The evening promises to be one of the most significant in the VAFA's history. You don't want to miss it. It's at Centrepiece at Melbourne Park, Thursday the 10th of July 2025. Tickets now on sale at vafa.com.au.
Almost done for a big edition of the game. Hang on a sec.
Not almost done. Not almost done.
Before we get
the
to
best segment of the entire show.
Okay.
Thanks to Sharon.
Get to that.
Ton Watch.
Ton Watch. We had no stinger for Ton Watch.
That was it.
That was it.
Yeah.
Just
Live
you getting
sting.
overexcited.
The live sting. I've got to do it every week and make it sound similar, and then it's kind of stingish.
A lot of people turn their heads in the office when you start yelling.
is he
What the
doing?
bloody hell's going on in there?
You do see the lights go up in the eyes as we get to this point of the recording.
Okay, so Tub Watch thanks to Sharon. No one's getting anywhere near 100. Surely not after the weekend. It
Baker's
was pouring
dozen.
down.
Baker's dozen this weekend.
No chance.
Jakey Dillon, who was playing Division 3 men's seniors, he's kicked 7 goals in 5 games, dropped down to the 2s this week. A lazy 13.
What?
13. So 1 game in the Resi's, 13 goals. It's not a bad start.
Not going to get 100.
So 13 to Jake this weekend. Tom Grett kicked 9 for St Bede's Mentone Reserves. 8 each to Thomas Coleman from Caulfield Grammarians thirds, Matthew Mallier from UHS VU Reserves, and then 7 each to Blake Williams from Box Hill North, 7 to Harry Davis at Wattle Park, and 7 to Ben Foster from Richmond Central. Leading women's goal kicker over the weekend in round 6 was Irina Maliaris from Caulfield Grammarians Div 4. It was her first game since 2023. Just rolled on in and booted 6.
Footy's easy
Handy.
for Irina.
So our season leaderboard.
Oh, we're up to the leaderboard. It's just not a big weekend for big goal kickers. That's a short segment, thanks to Sharon. Normally you rattle off 15 names and you keep going.
Just went the top 7. Just being a little more exclusive.
What was the 7th player's number?
We're just
What was the 7th player's number?
Kick 7.
7.
Yeah.
So you're out of double
lot of
digits.
sevens. There's a lot of sevens.
We're making Ton Watch a little more exclusive. It's not open to everyone.
Have you
It's not
said-
for the masses.
Did you
It's
say
just for the
any
elite.
of the 10 Premier
Just
clubs?
purely for the elite. Hey, don't be discriminating against my favourite divisional clubs.
That's a
Thank
big
you very
point from
much.
you.
That's outrageous from you. Season leaderboard, by the way. Bailey Pace is kicked 32 for the year.
Oh,
from
hang on.
Old
What was he on
Peninsula.
last week?
Senior men's.
What was he on
We don't look
last
back,
week?
Joseph. We only look forward. 29 for Jack Taylor Evans, who
Oh,
didn't
hang on.
play at
Now.
Powerhouse. We have to have an investigation
What's
into what's
happened to
going on
him?
with JTE.
What's happened to him?
We need JTE back. Luke Ashing booted 2. He's on 28 for the year. 28 also to Rory Calvert. 28 to Callum Randall. 26 to Blake Williams, who booted that 7 for Box Hill North. 25 for Andrew Ramsey from North Brunswick Senior Men's. 24 for the bank.
Yes.
Down at St Bede's Mentone Tigers.
The one this weekend, though. Come on,
And,
Jack.
our leading woman this year so far is Hannah Smith from St Kevin's senior side. She's got 22 for the season, booted 2 on the weekend.
Now, I need to speak to Michael Motter because when we've got Jake Dillon kicking 13 goals in the Resies, it would be natural to try and bring him back into the ones. Jace, we need him to be staying in the 2s, kicking a baker's dozen every week.
If he can...
Because it's only going to get wetter and colder.
We'll just say, look, leave him in the 2s for the next 7 weeks to work on his game, and then after that...
7 weeks.
As much,
after that,
as
once
much
he's hit
time
the
as you
ton,
want. As
whack
much
him up
time
in the
as you want.
senior side again, no problems at all.
Too much obsession with the number 7, you two. I said this last week, and it's not a slide on any other section, but are we any danger of anyone in William Buck Premier Men's kicking any more than like 3 goals on the weekend? I saw Sam Barnett might have kicked a couple.
I think he
the
had a
leading
quiet
goal
day.
kicker right now is Andreas Stefanakis, who will not get anywhere near 100 because he'll be playing for the VFL.
He kicked 4 on the weekend.
He's up to 17, leading Alex Lukic.
Yeah, Alex
16.
Lukic. Alex Lukic is actually on 18. But
How is he on 18? It's 16.
Yeah, no, he's on 18.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Are you
okay.
telling me that this is factually correct?
I'm just telling you that you're factually incorrect.
Now, before we get the tips, this is what I've heard today. We've had Wet Sail Willie We've had second quarter sats, the best fish in the pond, fire and brimstone. Nick Dixon is a player's coach. I'm still trying to understand what a player's coach is. Aren't they all coaches for the players?
Supposedly.
And you still haven't explained cadence to me yet.
Cadence is going to take a little bit
Because
longer.
Oh, okay.
Time.
Different to syllables.
Elapsing.
Is cadence. Right.
Can we get to tips now?
Did I get 5 last week?
In total?
Yeah.
No, you actually got 6. 6 for you, 7.
Improved week.
7 for Paddy. 6 for you, 7 for Paddy. You went 3 and 5 in Premier B and 3 and 5 in Premier Men's. Did you, Joseph? Paddy went 4 and 3. 4 in Premier Men's, Premier B rather, and 3 in William Buck Premier. So leading after 6 rounds is Patrick, the Grind, on 40. 5 clear now. This is starting to get a little worrying for you. 5 clear of you on 35. He's just edging out week by week.
Well, Paddy will be the first person to get to 100 this year.
You need a big week here, Joseph. You're 5 down. It's not time to swing for the fences yet, but...
You know who let me down on the weekend? I talked about this earlier. The Olds variant. Honestly.
Well, you got sucked into the aura, didn't you?
Well, because they demanded that we do it.
Let's not retread the path that you already eviscerated in first segment of the day.
So what we're going to do here,
Joey,
Joey, I think is let's change up the strategy a little bit. Try tipping some winners. Let's go with that. Here we go. Premier B. Premier B round 7. Caulfield Grammar versus Old Camberwell. What a blockbuster this is.
I'm going with second term Sats in this game. I think they've got a little bit of pep in their step, and I think the location of this game helps. They're good at home.
Is this one you could claw your way back? Could you get one back on him? Are you bold enough to pick the Wellers?
No, because my spies are telling me there are a couple of names coming to Caulfield, and if it's not this weekend, it's got to be damn soon. But I think at home th're going to win.
Old Geelong versus Old Ivanhoe. Again, we'll let Paddy pick first, and that gives you the opportunity to maybe switch things up.
That's unfair.
Life's not fair, Patrick.
This is a true 50-50. Old Geelong, very good at Como Park. Haven't lost there this year.
So Paddy's picking the draw.
I'm picking, actually, Old Ivanhoe to go on the road, as they have a couple of times this year, and win at Como. Joey's filthy with me.
Because I'm picking Old Ivanhoe.
Willie CYMS versus Old Carey.
So this is the other way. So again, Williamstown at home. They beat the Yogs there a couple of weeks ago, so they can hold their home fort. I'm taking Con.
Oh, you're finally going for him again, are you?
I need to get out of the freezer somehow.
Did Con send you an Instagram thing that said...
Broken heart.
Yeah.
Just a broken heart.
Yeah, he's been screening my calls ever since I didn't tip him a few weeks ago.
So he should.
Yep.
Now, in fairness, you're right. But Old Carey or Willie CYMS?
Old Carey for me.
Okay, there's an opportunity for Joey to go one further down.
Come on, Con.
Or get back in the game. Hampton Rovers versus OMs.
OMs.
And Fitzroy versus Old Trinity in the final game of Premier B.
I'm sticking strong with Donald.
Yeah, as am I. So only 1 point of difference for us.
Well, that's right. We're still 12 weeks to go, as you keep telling me in Tunwatch.
William Buck Premier Men's round 7 on Saturday afternoon. Our VAFA live stream and SEN app, simulcast on the app. University Blues versus Old Zabs. Our coverage from 1:45 at Melbourne Uni Oval.
Honestly. I just don't like the red and black people at all. They are doing my head in. They're annoying. So I'm going for the University Blues to make it 2 losses in a row to the Old Zavarians.
I'm on the other side. I love Dan Denani and what he's doing.
I didn't say I don't like Dan.
Well, that's what I took from that.
Overall. I reckon if we went back and checked your tips and why you're 5 behind, I have a feeling most of them would be Zabs. You picked them when they've lost, just to spite you, they've lost the game.
Also, they were very quiet this week. I didn't get any aura messages. No.
Okay.
Lucky I saw the scores when we started the podcast.
Old Zavarians to win for me.
Our KTV doubleheader from 11:35 a.m. Saturday morning. Really interesting, this one. St Kevin's and Old Haileybury.
Oh, this is going to be a belter, but I'm going for St Kevin's at home.
Yeah, St Kevin's at home, but yeah, we're going to find out a lot about the Bloods.
Another VAFA live stream from 1:55 with Jay Pignataro just admiring his work on the honour boards out at the snowfields. St Bernard's versus Old Scotch.
Now, we speak
There's
to
no
Mark,
point asking him.
Did we speak to Mark Nat in the pre-season, didn't we?
I'm
pretty sure I told him on that day that I don't care if you're 6-0, you'll be losing this game. Yep. And that hasn't changed for me.
Well, they're not 6 and 0, I can tell you that.
But this is your weakness. You're playing at the Snake Pit. You're
not a
vulnerable
weakness.
there. You haven't won there all year.
Oh, because the draw has got us travelling every bloody week.
But the travelling's no problem. You've won every game on the road and you haven't won at home
too
at
far
all.
the other way.
No.
What's going on? You've overcorrected. Are you sure?
Absolutely, I'm sure. Mate, St Bernard's will be the top 4 by Saturday night.
I'm tipping St Bernard's as well. So as much as it pains me to agree with you, Joe,
They will be in the top 4 on Saturday night. Put that on the graphic for Instagram this week. And someone else can say, has that bloke got shares in St Bernard's? And I'll tell him again that I do.
I want to find out who that is and bring them on the podcast.
Gone completely cold, that fella.
Clearly never heard
You
of
haven't.
the podcast. Collegians versus Old Brighton down at Harry Trott. Collegians have had a couple of heartbreaking losses down there against very good teams lately.
This will be a third. I can't see how Old Brighton lose this weekend.
No, they looking really good, Nick. As good as Collegians were, and we touched on it at the top of the show, I can't see them beating the Tunners in the place that they're in at the moment.
And the final game of the weekend at Waverley, De La Salle versus Uni Blacks. De La continually lamenting being in games, but just having periods of a game where they drop a few goals and just cost them victories. Uni Blacks have been up and down all over the place, but coming off a great win.
Uni Blacks, momentum continues.
Now, I tipped Nick Highland last week, and he let me down. But I'm going to double down. I think D-La get it started this week.
Are you going out there?
No, I'm at the University Oval for the Blues and the Zavs.
Oh, you'll get some feedback there. You'll get some feedback
I think
there.
you'll get more feedback than me, and you're not even there.
I won't be there, but if you are going out to that game,
we'll get you on the blower, Joe.
And Uni Blacks, I'll say it for the second week in a row. Go and have the afternoon tea. It's the best in the competition at the Dairy Bell. Thank you, lads. We'll be back next week
Joe.
to wrap up round 7 and look ahead to round 8. And then we have got a King's birthday weekend bye, which means we get a break ourselves, do we?
Bye.
I'm due for one. See you next week.